Bel, welcome to Talking Insights, and welcome to Congress. And how are you doing?
Pretty good. It's been a long time since I've been at Congress with Esomar. The last time I think was 2015, so it's really exciting to be back. Yeah.
Well, we're glad to have you back and on the podcast as well. So, introduce yourself. Like, what do you do?
Well, I'm a researcher. I really pay attention to discourse and narratives and how they shape ideas of belonging and identity. Alongside that, I edit for market researchers, such as those that present at Congress or other SMR events, as well as other academic scholars. I teach, and I'm also a member of the European Race and Imagery Foundation, which is an anti-racism organization. And so we build communities, we curate content, and we also do a bit of market research ourselves.
Wow, that's
It's a full roster.
Yeah, hell of a CV. Impressive. Well, I'm happy to have you here. So, on this podcast, we want to talk about inclusivity and specifically the language that's used in market research. So, it's can you elaborate on that? You know, the importance of it, and maybe the examples, and perhaps where we were, where we're at now, and where we should be. So. Not to ask too much of you.
Yeah, that's like three questions.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, yes. So one of the things I've been noticing actually in the last couple of years when I'm editing for Esomar especially is that there is more attention being paid to DEI topics. So not just in terms of the campaigns themselves being DEI related, but also researchers really bringing in more of an awareness and consciousness around how DEI plays a role in how a campaign might be received. And that's honestly really amazing to see. It is entirely the kind of evolution we should be experiencing. I used to work on the GMR many years ago. So that was my connection to SMR before. And you didn't see those topics so much. It was considered controversial back then, actually. So to see it so much more a part of the way that researchers are addressing certain topics or bringing it into topics where you wouldn't even necessarily associate it is really good. That's the direction we should be moving. And what I'm going to be talking about in my session this afternoon is in terms of where we need to be going. We need to be moving to a place where the language really reflects the intentions of the research, because that's where things still lack and lag behind. So sometimes when researchers are talking about a specific demographic, they're still using language that might exploit or oppress that group. And it's not because the researchers don't care or because they have negative intentions. It's simply about a lack of awareness, I think, and a lack of knowledge. And so that's an area where we could grow as an industry and better support ad campaigns as well.
So in that sense, the business impact of that will be obviously a negative one, because you're not able to communicate in the right way to the right demographic, especially the demographics that are in the minority, harder to reach. And it would, what would be the positive business impact of actually being able to hone the language used and really understand the demographics?
Well, obviously the campaigns would resonate better, and I think you see a better connection with those groups, and I think and also beyond, because when you get a message right and you tell a strong, rich story, it doesn't only reach the target. It's, everyone can pay attention and relate to it. So I think, you do have very healthy implications for ROI when you start to get that message right. I think Annika Quinn de Jong gave a presentation yesterday here at Congress about that, about brand reputation and responsibility. And so she's been following and actually looking into what the business impact would be. But there's also the social impact. And I'll be talking a little bit about that this afternoon too, about how social realities are produced. So Guillaume Johnson, a colleague of mine, he has been researching brand apologies and how they respond when they don't get the messaging right. And audiences kind of complain, or, there's maybe a very viral reaction, and then a brand is put in a position where they need to apologize. And even the language that's used in that apology has implications for how we then understand certain issues or certain groups, how we think about race, racism, and all kinds of other forms of discrimination, and identity construction. So coming back to the research, I think we really have a responsibility as market researchers to be informing our clients, ad teams, much better with the language we use, lead by example, so that when it comes to campaign time and getting out to the audience and thinking about the business, we're already all on the same page and using, the right terms.
So how do you convince the researchers to do this, to be more inclusive, to use the right language? Has there been any resistance to it?
Sometimes, as an editor, I can sometimes make a suggestion, and not every author is receptive to it, because I think the fear is that it becomes too complicated, or that they'll perhaps use a term that might be more appropriate but won't be so recognizable. A good example of this is the term woke. That doesn't mean it doesn't mean what it's being used for a lot of the time. It's being used to mean all kinds of things like Gen Z, progressive, very left-wing, alternative, when actually it's an African-American vernacular English term that basically just means you're very aware and you can keep yourself alive. So there are people, my dad is a perfect example, actually. He's not really somebody you would call progressive. I love you, Dad. But, but he is very woke. And he is very critical, and he understands how he moves through the world as an African-American man. And that term is very specific to a very contextual experience in the world, very specific to a location and a place and a group of people. So for it to just be used so flippantly, quite often in market research, and then when you push back, the reaction can be, but everybody knows what I mean when I use woke, so I want to stick with it. To try and come back to answering your question around how to convince market researchers, I think maybe we do need to refer to the work of Annika and Guillaume, where they're showing, what the brand implications can be, in Annika's sense, showing how a brand can grow and become healthier and more relevant if you take that responsibility seriously. And on the other hand, looking at some of these reputation tarnishing scandals that happen. And, the more important social media becomes, the more of a decision-making role consumers have, because they really can push a narrative. So I think, it's not enough anymore for a big brand to say, oh, well, we put out a little apology, it's okay. And Guillaume's work shows that so well, that that's changing over like the last decade. We have so much more force as consumers. It's in everybody's best interest to just get it right. And so if you're the market researcher and you're the one coming into the room saying, this is the group, this is what they want, and this is how they want to be spoken to, in the current climate, in the way that we communicate now and the way we consume, and that kind of overlap of communication and consuming, it's in everybody's best interest to just be on the same page from the beginning.
So for researchers that do want to get it right, and perhaps coming into this more fresh, more new, but they want to be able to use the correct language, what steps do they take to be more inclusive in their practices?
Well, teams need to be inclusive, because if you have an inclusive team from the beginning, you're going to be talking to each other, learning together. There's for sure so many things I would not be the right person to talk about, but then there's other things that I can really, as we've been talking about just now, that I can say, okay, that term wouldn't be appropriate here, it would be more appropriate there. So that's one of the things we need to be thinking about. I think it is about going out and seeking the language. It's about being more sensitive, being open to being told that you're wrong. It's about humility, and not always thinking that because we understand the methodology and the analytical process, that we're experts on every single topic. So yeah, and I do think we have a generation, the kind of the younger generation of researchers do approach it in that way. I see that in teaching as well. The program where I am with, we're talking 20-year-olds that are really teaching me a lot, just because they approach the world with such an open mind. They're so much more willing to confront people that don't agree with them and really listen. So I think having that mindset will allow you to take in more, and perhaps start using language differently, and challenge yourself a bit too.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. This is I'm going to try and make your presentation this afternoon, but it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.